When I opened the door and saw my twin sister standing there with a split lip and a bruise blooming purple across her cheekbone, I knew my life was about to change forever. "Emma," she whispered, her voice cracking like thin ice. "I need your help." We stood there in my doorway, mirror images of each other. Same auburn hair, same green eyes, same freckles scattered across our noses like constellation maps. But where my face was clean and rested, hers told a story I'd been dreading to hear for 3 years. I pulled her inside quickly, glancing down the hallway of my apartment building before closing the door. My hands were already shaking. "Sarah, what happened? Did he? Please." She grabbed my wrist, and I felt how cold her fingers were. "I can't do this anymore. I just need 1 week. Maybe 2. Just long enough to figure things out." I led her to my couch, the one I'd bought at a thrift store when I first moved out here to Portland. It was worn but comfortable, nothing like the expensive leather furniture she had in that pristine house 40 minutes away in the suburbs. I sat beside her, and she folded into herself, making her body as small as possible. "Tell me what happened," I said softly. She laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "What hasn't happened, Emma? It's been 3 years. 3 years of walking on eggshells, of making excuses, of pretending everything's fine when people ask. I'd known, of course. You always know when your twin is hurting, even when she's lying through her perfectly white teeth." Sarah had married Marcus Chin 4 years ago in a ceremony that looked like something out of a magazine. White roses everywhere, string quartet, reception at the country club. I'd been her maid of honor, standing beside her in pale pink silk, watching her face glow with what I thought was happiness. The first year was fine. Normal. We'd have lunch twice a month, and she'd talk about Marcus's promotion at the law firm, about the house they were renovating, about their plans for the future. But somewhere in year 2, the gaps between our lunches grew longer. She started canceling plans. When we did meet, she wore long sleeves even in summer, and her laugh had lost its music. "He controls everything," she said now, staring at her hands. "The money, the car, who I can see. Last month, I tried to visit Mom without telling him, and he..." She touched her cheek gently. "He said I was disrespecting him. That a wife should tell her husband where she's going." The anger rose in my throat like bile. "Sarah, you need to leave him. For good." "I can't." Her voice was so quiet I almost missed it. "I've tried. Emma, I've tried so many times. But he finds me. He always finds me. And when he does..." She trailed off, and I didn't need her to finish. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside my window, I could hear the sounds of the city. Car horns, someone's music playing too loud, the distant wail of a siren. Normal life continued while my sister was falling apart. What if we switched? The words came out before I'd fully thought them through. Sarah's head snapped up. "What? What if we switched places?" I repeated, the idea taking shape as I spoke. "Just for a little while. You stay here, rest, heal, figure out your next steps. And I'll go to your house. Be you." "Emma, that's crazy." "Is it?" I stood up, pacing now. "We used to do it all the time when we were kids. Remember? We fooled teachers, friends, even Mom sometimes. We were 12. So, we're identical twins. Same height, same voice, same everything. I've been to your house enough times. I know the layout, I know his schedule. You don't know Marcus." Her voice was sharp now, edged with something that might have been fear or warning. "Not really. The Marcus you've met at family dinners, that's not who he is behind closed doors." I knelt in front of her, taking both her hands in mine. "Then let me see who he really is. Let me deal with him while you catch your breath. He won't know the difference, Sarah. And maybe I can make things difficult enough that he'll want the divorce." She searched my face, and I could see her wavering. "You'd really do this for me? You're my sister. My twin. We shared a womb for 9 months. I think I can share your life for a week or 2. A tear slipped down her cheek, and she wiped it away quickly. "He has dinner at exactly 6:30 every night. He expects the house to be spotless. He doesn't like it when I wear red, says it makes me look cheap. And Emma..." She gripped my hands tighter. "He hates being questioned. About anything." "Noted," I said, though inside my heart was hammering. What was I getting myself into? But when I looked at my sister, really looked at her, I saw the girl who used to braid my hair before school, who shared her Halloween candy even when I'd eaten all mine, who held my hand during our father's funeral. I saw someone who needed me in a way she'd never needed anyone before. Okay, she whispered. Okay, let's do it. We spent the next 2 hours going over everything. Sarah walked me through her daily routine with the kind of detail that made my stomach turn. Not because it was complicated, but because it was so controlled. Marcus leaves for the firm at 7:15, she said, sitting cross-legged on my couch now, a cup of tea warming her hands. He expects breakfast ready by 6:45. 2 eggs, scrambled but not too wet, whole wheat toast with butter on only one slice, and black coffee in the blue mug, never the white one. I wrote it all down in my notebook, though the specificity was already burning itself into my memory. He comes home at 6:20. Dinner needs to be on the table by 6:30. He'll ask about your day, but he doesn't actually want details. Just say it was fine, or I worked on the garden. Don't mention friends. Don't mention going anywhere. What about your phone? I asked. She pulled it out, and I saw her hands were steadier now. He checks it. Every night after dinner he'll take it and scroll through messages, call logs, everything. I have it set up so that nothing suspicious shows. I deleted social media months ago. Jesus, Sara. There's more. She unlocked the phone and showed me the apps. This one tracks my location. He can see where I am at any time. And this one. She tapped another icon. It's a baby monitor app, but he has it connected to cameras throughout the house. Living room, kitchen, bedroom. The tea I'd been drinking suddenly tasted bitter. He watches you. He says it's for security. Her laugh was harsh. But yeah, he watches. I set down my cup carefully, afraid I might throw it otherwise. How do I avoid the cameras? You can't. Just act normal. Act like me. Be quiet, be small, be perfect. She met my eyes. Can you do that, Emma? Can you be someone you're not? I thought about my life, my real life. I was a freelance graphic designer who worked from home in yoga pants, who ordered takeout more than I cooked, who had friends over for wine and loud conversations. I was messy and opinionated and free. Could I pretend to be the opposite? I'll manage, I said. What about physical things? Does he? Is there anything intimate I should know about? Sarah's face flushed. He'll expect, but I can give you something. Tell him you started your period. That'll buy you at least a few days. We kept going detail after detail, until my notebook was full and my head was spinning. She told me about the housekeeper who came on Tuesdays, about Marcus's mother who called every Sunday at noon, about the way he liked his shirts folded, and how he'd explode if the remote control wasn't on the right side of the coffee table. He sounds exhausting, I said finally. He is. She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. Emma, are you sure about this? Because once we start, we can't just stop halfway. He can't know. If he finds out. She didn't finish, but she didn't have to. I reached out and hugged her, feeling her thin frame against mine. When had she gotten so thin? I'm sure. I whispered into her hair. I'm going to make him pay for what he's done to you. The next morning, I stood in front of my mirror and barely recognized myself. Sarah had helped me get ready, her clothes on my body, her makeup on my face, her wedding ring on my finger. The diamond caught the light, and I had to resist the urge to rip it off. Remember, Sarah said, standing beside me in my comfortable jeans and sweater. He left for a conference yesterday. He's coming back this afternoon. You have a few hours to get used to the house before he arrives. She'd given me her keys, her purse, her entire identity. In my wallet was her driver's license, her credit cards, though she'd told me Marcus monitored every purchase. And a photo of the two of them on their wedding day. They looked happy. It made me angry. What will you do? I asked her. Rest. Sleep. Maybe call Mom. She smiled, and it was the first real smile I'd seen from her in years. Maybe just breathe. I drove her car, a silver BMW that Marcus had chosen, to the address I'd visited dozens of times for dinners and holidays. But this time felt different. This time, I was pulling into the driveway as Sarah, not as Emma. This time, I had a key to the front door, The house was exactly as I remembered. Pristine, modern, cold. Everything in shades of gray and white, not a thing out of place. I walked through slowly, trailing my fingers along the granite countertops, the leather furniture, the chrome fixtures. It felt more like a showroom than a home. In the kitchen, I found Sarah's handwritten note tucked under a magnet on the refrigerator. Instructions for dinner tonight: grilled salmon, asparagus, wild rice. Marcus's favorite. Below that she'd written, "Be careful. Trust your instincts. I love you." I spent the afternoon cooking, cleaning what was already clean, and studying the house like I was preparing for an exam. I found the cameras Sarah had mentioned, small, discreet, hidden in the corners of rooms. I felt their glass eyes on me and forced myself to move the way Sarah moved. Quietly, efficiently, without any wasted motion. At 6:15, I heard the garage door open. My heart started racing. I checked my reflection in the hallway mirror one last time, smoothed down Sarah's blouse, and took a deep breath. The door opened, and Marcus walked in. He was handsome in the way that expensive things are handsome. Polished, groomed, perfectly put together in a navy suit that probably cost more than my rent. His black hair was styled with precision, and when he set down his briefcase, I noticed his watch, a Rolex, gleaming gold. "Sarah," he said, his voice warm and smooth. He smiled, and for a moment, I understood how my sister had fallen for him. "I missed you." He crossed the space between us and pulled me into a hug. I stiffened before I could stop myself, and I felt him notice. His arms tightened slightly, just enough to feel like a warning. "Missed you too," I managed, my voice coming out quieter than usual. More like Sarah. He pulled back and studied my face. For one terrifying second, I thought he knew. I thought he could see through the disguise, see that I wasn't his wife but her twin, an imposter in his perfect house. But then he just smiled again. "Dinner smells good. I'm starving." "It'll be ready in 5 minutes," I said. "Perfect." He loosened his tie and walked toward the living room. "Oh, and Sarah? I noticed the garden looks a bit neglected. Make sure you get to that this weekend." It wasn't a request. It was a command. "Of course," I said to him. As I planted the salmon with hands that wanted to shake, I realized something that made my blood run cold. I hadn't just stepped into my sister's life. I'd stepped into her cage. And I had no idea how long I could survive here before I snapped. Dinner was a performance I hadn't rehearsed enough for. Marcus sat at the head of the table. Of course he did. While I took the seat to his right, the one Sarah had occupied for 4 years. The salmon was perfectly cooked, the asparagus tender, the rice fluffy. I'd followed her instructions exactly. But as I watched him take his first bite, I realized cooking the meal was the easy part. "How was the conference?" I asked, trying to sound interested but not too interested. He chewed slowly, deliberately, before answering. "Productive. Daniels from the New York office is retiring, which means there's an opening for a senior partner." He took a sip of the wine he'd poured for himself. "None for me," I noticed. "I'm the top candidate." "That's wonderful," I said, the words feeling like paste in my mouth. "It would mean longer hours. More travel." He looked at me then, his dark eyes assessing. "I'll need you to be more independent. Handle things here without bothering me with every little detail." I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from saying what I wanted to say. Sarah would nod. Sarah would agree. So I did. "Of course." "Good." He went back to his meal, and we ate in silence for a few minutes. The only sounds were silverware against china, and the faint hum of the refrigerator. I'd never experienced a silence quite so loud. "Your sister called while I was away," he said suddenly. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. "Emma." His tone was casual, but I sensed something underneath. "Left a voicemail. Something about wanting to have lunch next week." He looked up at me. I deleted it. The anger flashed hot and immediate, but I forced it down. "Why?" The single word hung in the air between us, and I watched his expression shift. The pleasant mask slipped just slightly, revealing something harder underneath. "Why?" he repeated, setting down his fork with deliberate care. "Because, Sarah, we've discussed this. Your sister is a bad influence. She's irresponsible, unmarried, living in that tiny apartment like some college student." I don't want her filling your head with ideas. Ideas? The word dripped with disdain. She's my twin, I said softly, testing the boundaries. We used to see each other all the time. Used to. He picked up his fork again. You have a husband now. A home. Responsibilities. You don't need to spend your time with someone who doesn't understand that. I watched him eat. This man who had systematically cut my sister off from everyone who loved her. Who had isolated her so completely that she felt trapped in her own life. And I felt something cold and sharp crystallize in my chest. He wanted perfect? I'd give him perfect. But my version of it. You're right, I said, my voice sugary sweet. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking clearly. He nodded satisfied. That's my girl. After dinner, he settled into the living room with his laptop while I cleaned the kitchen. Every dish had to be washed, dried, and put away in exactly the right spot. I felt the camera in the corner watching me. And I imagined Marcus watching too, even though he was supposedly working. When I finished, I found him on the couch, his phone in his hand. Sarah, he said without looking up. Your phone. This was the moment Sarah had warned me about. I pulled the phone from my pocket and handed it over, my pulse racing. I'd been careful today. I'd only texted her once from my own phone to say, I'm okay, and I'd made sure to delete the message thread entirely. He scrolled through it with the efficiency of practice. Messages from his mother, which I'd answered dutifully, a few spam texts, nothing else. He checked the call log, the photos, even the search history. Good, he said finally, handing it back. Go get ready for bed. I'll be up in an hour. I climbed the stairs to the bedroom, their bedroom, with its king-size bed and sterile gray walls, and changed into the pajamas Sarah had told me about. Simple, modest, nothing that could be considered provocative or inviting. I set out 2 Advil on the nightstand and waited. When Marcus came up exactly 1 hour later, I was already under the covers, curled on my side. I started my period today, I said quietly. Pretty bad cramps. He paused in the doorway, and I could feel his annoyance even with my back turned. Of course you did. He got ready for bed in silence, and when he finally climbed in beside me, he stayed on his side. Close enough to claim ownership, far enough to show his displeasure. I lay there in the dark, listening to his breathing even out as he fell asleep, and I planned. The first real test came 3 days later. I'd settled into a routine by then. The same breakfast, the same cleaning schedule, the same quiet submission. But I'd also been watching, learning, cataloging every quirk and trigger. Marcus was a man of rigid patterns, and patterns could be disrupted. It started small. On Tuesday morning, I made his coffee in the white mug instead of the blue one. He noticed immediately. This is the wrong mug. Oh, I said, my voice concerned but not apologetic. I thought you might want to change. The blue one had a small chip in it, so I put it aside to replace it. There was no chip. But he didn't know that. He stared at the white mug, and I could see the war playing out behind his eyes. The mug was fine. The coffee was perfect. But it wasn't what he'd expected, and that bothered him. Fine, he said finally. But order a new blue one today. Of course. That afternoon, I moved the remote control to the left side of the coffee table. Not far, just 6 inches from where it usually sat. When he came home and reached for it automatically, his hand found empty space. Sarah. His voice was tight. Where's the remote? Right there, I said, pointing to it. Where it always is. It's on the wrong side. Is it? I tilted my head, all innocent confusion. I could have sworn you liked it there. You must have moved it last night. I didn't move it. Then maybe I did when I was cleaning and forgot. I walked over and picked it up, handing it to him with a smile. Sorry, honey. I'll try to be more careful. He took it, but his jaw was clenched. These were tiny things, meaningless things, but they were adding up. I could see it in the way his shoulders had tensed, in the slight twitch of his left eye. On Wednesday, I made salmon again, his favorite, the same dish from my first night. But this time, I overcooked it. Not enough to be inedible, but enough to make it dry and slightly rubbery. This isn't like you, he said, pushing the fish around his plate. You've made this dish 100 times. I'm sorry, I said, taking a bite of my own. I got distracted. The gardener called about the sprinkler system, and I lost track of time. What gardener? We don't have a gardener. I blinked at him. Don't we? I thought, no, you're right. I must be thinking of something else. I laughed softly, confused. Sorry, I've been so scattered lately. He set down his fork. Are you feeling all right? Just tired, I said. I haven't been sleeping well. That was true, actually. I'd been lying awake most nights, hyper-aware of the man sleeping beside me, ready to bolt if he moved too suddenly or reached for me in the dark. Thursday, I forgot to buy his favorite brand of coffee. Friday, I put his dress shirts away in the wrong drawer. Saturday, I was 5 minutes late getting dinner on the table. None of it was dramatic. None of it was obvious sabotage. But each small deviation from perfection was a grain of sand in the machinery of his control. And I could see him starting to crack. By the end of the first week, Marcus was unraveling in small, visible ways. He started checking his watch more often, as if time itself had become unreliable. He'd come home and walk through the house with the focus of an inspector, looking for things out of place. And he'd find them: a book turned the wrong way on the shelf, a hand towel folded in thirds instead of halves, the thermostat set to 71 instead of 70. Sarah, he'd say each time, his voice strained with manufactured patience. You're not yourself lately. And I'd apologize. Sweetly. Genuinely. With just enough confusion in my eyes to make him doubt whether these things were intentional, or if his perfect wife was simply falling apart. The real turning point came on Sunday, when his mother called. Caroline Chun was a formidable woman who'd raised Marcus to believe he was destined for greatness. Sarah had always been terrified of her. I knew this from years of listening to my sister's anxious preparation before every family dinner, every holiday gathering. Caroline had exacting standards, and Sarah had spent 4 years trying desperately to meet them. But I wasn't Sarah. The phone rang at exactly noon, as it did every Sunday. Marcus answered it in the living room, putting it on speaker as he always did so he could monitor my side of the conversation. Marcus, darling. Caroline's crisp voice filled the room. How are you? I'm well, Mother. Sarah's here too. Hello, Caroline, I said, keeping my tone respectful but not fearful. Sarah. There was always a pause after she said my sister's name. A little space that felt like judgment. I'm calling about Thanksgiving. I'll need you to prepare the sides again this year. The same dishes as last time. The green bean casserole, the sweet potato souffle, the dinner rolls. You remember the recipes? Sarah had complained about this last year. Caroline had invited 20 people to Thanksgiving, then assigned Sarah the responsibility of cooking half the meal, while taking all the credit. And if anything wasn't perfect, she'd made sure everyone knew whose fault it was. Actually, I said slowly, I was thinking we might host Thanksgiving this year. The silence on the other end was deafening. Marcus's head snapped toward me. Excuse me. Caroline's voice had ice in it. Well, you've hosted for so many years. I thought you might enjoy a break. We have plenty of space here, and I'd love to do the cooking. Something a little more modern, maybe? I've been watching cooking shows and... Sarah. Marcus's voice was low, warning. But I continued, my tone innocent and bright. I was thinking of a maple-glazed turkey instead of the traditional butter-basted one. And maybe a quinoa stuffing? It's much healthier than bread-based stuffing. And Caroline, didn't you mention your cholesterol at the last dinner? I most certainly did not, Caroline snapped. Marcus, what is going on with your wife? Marcus's face had gone red. Mother, I'll call you back. See that you do. He ended the call and turned to me. And for the first time, I saw genuine anger crack through his controlled exterior. What the hell was that? He said, his voice quiet but shaking. What was what? I met his eyes steadily. I was just trying to help. Your mother works so hard every year, and I thought. You don't think. He stood up, and I had to fight the urge to step back. You don't offer to host my mother's Thanksgiving. You don't suggest changes to traditions that have been in place for 30 years. And you certainly don't comment on her cholesterol in front of me. I was concerned about her health. Stop. He held up a hand. Just stop. I don't know what's gotten into you lately, but this ends now. You're acting strange, you're making mistakes, and now you're embarrassing me in front of my mother. I let tears well up in my eyes, not hard, given how angry I actually was. I'm sorry. I've just been feeling so tired and confused. Maybe I should see a doctor. That stopped him. Marcus was a man who valued appearances above all else. And a wife who needed to see a doctor suggested something was wrong with her, not him. Maybe, he said finally, his tone shifting to something that might have sounded like concern to someone who didn't know better. Yes, maybe you should. I'll make an appointment with Dr. Reynolds. Thank you, I whispered. He pulled me into a hug then, and I let him, even though every cell in my body wanted to push him away. His arms were tight around me, possessive and controlling even in this gesture that was supposed to be comforting. I just want you to be okay, Sarah, he murmured into my hair. I need you to be okay. What he meant was, I need you to be obedient. Over his shoulder, I caught sight of our reflection in the hallway mirror. We looked like a normal couple embracing, like a husband comforting his wife. But I could see what the mirror couldn't show. The way his fingers dug just slightly too hard into my back, the rigid set of his jaw, the control in every point of contact. And I thought of Sarah bearing this for years, living in this beautiful prison, trying so hard to be perfect that she'd lost herself completely. Well, if Marcus wanted perfection, he was going to get the opposite. And I was just getting started. That night, after Marcus fell asleep, I slipped out of bed and went to the bathroom. I pulled out the phone Sarah had given me, my real phone, which I'd hidden in a tampon box Marcus would never think to check, and texted my sister. How are you? I typed. Her response came within seconds. She must have been awake too. Better. Sleeping. Eating. Mom came by today. Emma, I forgot what it felt like to laugh. My throat tightened. Good. Stay there. Stay safe. How is it? How is he? I thought about how to answer that. Exactly like you said. But I'm handling it. There was a long pause before her next message. Be careful. Please. He's more dangerous than you think. I stared at those words, feeling a chill run down my spine. What do you mean? Just trust your instincts. If anything feels wrong, get out. Promise me. I promise. But I wasn't sure I meant it, because something had shifted in me over this past week. Every time Marcus tried to control me, every time he issued a command or checked my phone or looked at me like I was property he owned, something dark and determined settled deeper into my bones. I wasn't just doing this to give Sarah time to escape anymore. I was doing it because someone needed to show Marcus Chun that not everything in life could be controlled, that not every woman would bow to his authority, that there were consequences for the way he'd treated my sister. I was doing it because I wanted him to suffer. The next morning, I made breakfast perfectly. Blue mug, eggs cooked exactly right, toast buttered precisely. Marcus noticed, and I could see him relax slightly. Thank you, he said, almost surprised. Of course. I smiled at him. I'm going to do better, Marcus. I promise. He left for work in a better mood than he'd been in for days, and I waved to him from the doorway like a dutiful wife. Then I went inside and got to work on phase 2 of my plan. I started with his office. The one room in the house Sarah had told me was completely off limits. The door was locked, but I'd found the key in his nightstand drawer the second night. Inside, it was exactly what I'd expected. Dark wood furniture, law degrees on the walls, filing cabinets filled with cases and documents, and a laptop sitting on his desk, password protected. I didn't touch it. Not yet. But I took photos of everything. The desk layout, the filing system, the papers stacked neatly in his inbox. I wanted to know this room as well as I knew the rest of the house, because knowledge was power, and I was going to need all the power I could gather. Next, I went through the cameras. Sarah had shown me how to access the feeds from her phone, and now I studied them, looking for blind spots. The bedroom had a camera pointed at the door but not the bathroom. The kitchen camera covered the main workspace, but not the pantry. Small spaces where I could exist without being watched. Then I called Dr. Reynolds' office and made an appointment for myself, just like Marcus had suggested. But I asked for Dr. Sarah Kim instead. A woman doctor I'd found online who specialized in domestic abuse cases. I was building a case. Slowly, carefully, with evidence and witnesses. Because this wasn't just about making Marcus uncomfortable anymore. This was about making sure he couldn't do this to anyone else ever again. The appointment with Dr. Kim was on Tuesday afternoon. I told Marcus I was seeing Dr. Reynolds, and he seemed pleased that I was taking care of the problem. Dr. Kim's office was in a modern building downtown, nothing like the sterile medical complex where Marcus's family doctor practiced. The waiting room had soft lighting and comfortable chairs, and when Dr. Kim called me in, her smile was warm and genuine. "Sarah," she said, extending her hand. I shook it, then closed the door behind me. "Actually, I'm Emma, Sarah's twin sister." Her eyebrows rose, but she didn't seem shocked. I suppose in her line of work, she'd seen stranger things. I told her everything. About the switch, about Marcus's control, about the years of abuse my sister had endured. I showed her the photos I'd taken of the cameras, the tracking apps on the phone, and the list of rules Sarah had written out for me. Dr. Kim listened without interruption, her expression growing more serious with each detail. "What you're describing is a classic pattern of coercive control," she said when I finished. "It's a form of domestic abuse that doesn't always leave physical marks, but it's just as damaging. Your sister is very brave for leaving, and you're brave for helping her." "I want to do more than help her leave," I said. "I want to make sure he can't hurt her anymore. Or anyone else." Dr. Kim nodded slowly. "Documentation is key. Everything you're doing, keeping records, taking photos, that's exactly right. But Emma, you need to be careful. Men like Marcus, when they lose control, they can become unpredictable, dangerous." "I know. Do you?" She leaned forward, her gaze intense. "Because right now you're poking a bear. You're disrupting his carefully controlled world. And when he realizes what's happening, there will be a reaction. A big one." I thought about Sarah's warning, about the fear in her eyes when she talked about Marcus finding her. What should I do? Continue documenting. But have an exit strategy. Always know where the doors are, keep your real phone hidden but accessible. And if anything escalates, get out immediately. She pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. "This is the number for a women's shelter. They have legal resources, protection services, everything you might need. And this," she handed me a second card, "is my personal cell. Call me anytime, day or night." I took the cards, feeling both reassured and terrified. This was real. This was dangerous. And I was right in the middle of it. When I got home, Marcus was already there. He wasn't supposed to be. It was only 3:30, and he never left work before 6. My heart jumped into my throat as I walked through the door, and found him standing in the living room, my phone in his hand. Not Sarah's phone. My phone. The one I'd hidden in the bathroom. "Emma," he said, and hearing my real name in his mouth made my blood run cold. Or should I say Sarah? "I'm confused." The room seemed to tilt. "Marcus, I can explain." "Can you?" He held up the phone, and I could see my messages with Sarah pulled up on the screen. "Because I'm very interested to hear how you explain this. How do you explain pretending to be my wife? How do you explain sneaking around my house, going through my things, taking photos of my office?" He knew. Oh God, he knew everything. "She needed help," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She was afraid of you. She had bruises, Marcus. You hurt her." "I never laid a hand on her." His voice was calm, which was somehow worse than if he'd been yelling. "Those bruises? She's clumsy. She walks into things. I've been patient with her, understanding, but apparently that wasn't enough. She had to run away and send in her twin sister to spy on me." "That's not what happened, isn't it?" He took a step toward me, and I took a step back. "You've been sabotaging me from day one. The coffee, the remote, the dinner with my mother. Little things designed to make me look crazy, to make me doubt myself. That's what abusers do, Emma. They gaslight. They manipulate." The accusation was so absurd, so perfectly inverted, that I almost laughed. Almost. But there was nothing funny about the way he was looking at me, about the cold calculation in his eyes. "Where is she?" he asked softly. "Where's Sarah?" "I don't know." "Liar." He moved faster than I expected, closing the distance between us. His hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, his fingers digging in hard enough to hurt. Tell me where my wife is. Let go of me. My voice came out stronger than I felt. Not until you tell me where she is. She's my wife, Emma. She belongs with me. Everything she has, everything she is, it's because of me. And you have no right to interfere. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. You're hurting me. Am I? His smile was terrible. Funny. Sarah used to say the same thing. But I'm not hurting you, Emma. I'm barely touching you. You're just being dramatic. Hysterical. Women always are. In that moment, I saw exactly what Sarah had lived with. The gaslighting, the casual cruelty disguised as concern. The way he could twist reality until you doubted your own perceptions. And I understood why she'd felt so trapped. But I also understood something else. I wasn't Sarah. And I wasn't going to let him win. You know what I think? I said, meeting his eyes. I think you're terrified. I think you built this perfect little kingdom where you controlled everything. And now it's falling apart. And instead of looking at yourself, instead of asking why your wife felt she had to run away, you're trying to blame everyone else. His grip loosened slightly, more from shock than anything else. No one talked to Marcus Chun like this. Certainly not Sarah. I think you're a small, insecure man who needs to control women to feel powerful. I continued. And I think the best thing Sarah ever did was leave you. For a second, we just stared at each other. Then he let go of my wrist and stepped back, his expression transforming into something cold and calculating. Get out, he said quietly. Get out of my house. Gladly. I grabbed Sarah's purse, my purse now, and walked toward the door. My whole body was shaking, adrenaline coursing through me. But I forced myself to move calmly, deliberately. I wouldn't run. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Emma, he called as I reached the door. I turned. Tell Sarah I'll find her. This isn't over. We're married. That means something. And I won't give up what's mine. The threat hung in the air between us, clear as crystal. We'll see about that, I said and walked out. I drove to my apartment with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Every few seconds, I checked the rearview mirror, half expecting to see Marcus's car following me. But the road behind me stayed empty. When I burst through my apartment door, Sarah jumped up from the couch, her face going pale. Emma? What happened? You're not supposed to be back yet. He knows. I locked the door behind me, then checked it twice more. He found my phone. He knows everything. Sarah sank back down onto the couch, and for a moment she looked like she might be sick. Oh God, Emma, I'm so sorry. I never should have asked you to do this. What did he say? Did he hurt you? I looked down at my wrist, where Marcus's fingers had left red marks that were already starting to fade. He grabbed me, and he threatened you. Said he'd find you, that you're his wife and he doesn't give up what's his. We need to leave. Sarah stood up, already moving toward the bedroom. Both of us. Tonight. We can go to Mom's or maybe out of state. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. No, we're not running. She turned to look at me, confusion and fear warring on her face. Emma, you don't understand. When Marcus wants something, he doesn't stop. He'll find us. He always finds me. Then we make sure he can't touch you when he does. I pulled out the business cards Dr. Kim had given me. We have documentation. We have evidence. We have witnesses. And now we have something else. Him assaulting me. That's what he did, Sarah. He grabbed me, he hurt me, and I have the marks to prove it. That won't be enough, she whispered. His family has money, connections. He's a lawyer, Emma. He knows how to make things disappear. Maybe. I sat down beside her and took her hands. But we're not alone in this. Dr. Kim specializes in cases like yours. And I've been documenting everything, the cameras, the tracking apps, the control. It's not just your word against his anymore. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I'm scared. I know. I am too. I squeezed her hands. But I'm also angry. And I think you should be angry too. Because what he did to you, what he took from you, that's not okay. And men like Marcus, they keep doing it because no one stops them. Because their victims are too afraid to fight back. I'm not brave like you. Yes, you are. I brushed a tear from her cheek. You walked away, Sarah. That's the bravest thing anyone can do. And now we finish it. Together. The next morning, we went to the police station. Sarah was terrified, her hand trembling in mine as we walked through the doors. But she'd agreed to file a report, to start the official process of getting a restraining order. I stayed beside her the whole time, showing the officer my wrist, telling him about Marcus's threat, corroborating everything Sarah said about the years of abuse. The officer, a woman in her 40s named Detective Morrison, listened carefully and took notes. What you're describing is domestic violence, she said to Sarah gently. Coercive control, isolation, intimidation. These are all forms of abuse. You were right to leave. But will it be enough? Sarah asked, her voice small. For a restraining order? I think so. Especially with your sister's testimony about the assault yesterday. Detective Morrison looked at me. You said there are cameras in the house? That he tracks her phone? Yes. And I have screenshots, photos, everything documented. Good. That helps. She turned back to Sarah. I have to be honest with you, restraining orders aren't perfect. They're a piece of paper, and they only work if the person respects the law. But they're also a legal declaration that someone has crossed a line. And if he violates it, the consequences are much more severe. Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes. Okay, let's do it. We spent the next 2 hours filling out paperwork, giving statements and building the case. By the time we left, my head was pounding and Sarah looked exhausted. But there was also something else in her expression, something that might have been hope. Marcus tried to call 17 times that day. Then he started texting. Sarah, please call me. We need to talk. I know you're with your sister. She's poisoning you against me. Everything I've done has been for you. For us. Don't do this. Don't throw away our marriage. The messages got progressively more desperate, then angry, then threatening. Sarah's hands shook every time the phone buzzed. So finally I turned it off and put it in a drawer. He can't reach you. I told her. And in a few days there will be a legal order saying he's not allowed to. But that night, someone knocked on my apartment door. We both froze. It was past 10, and I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw a man I didn't recognize, middle-aged, wearing a suit, holding a manila envelope. Yes. I called through the door. I'm looking for Sarah Chun. I have documents that need to be delivered. A process server. My heart sank. I opened the door just enough to take the envelope. I'll make sure she gets it. Inside were divorce papers. Marcus was filing first, and his petition painted Sarah as an unstable woman who'd abandoned her marriage and was being manipulated by her sister. He was asking for the house, the cars, everything. And at the bottom, a note in his handwriting. You want to play games? Let's play. Sarah read it and started crying. He's going to destroy me. He's going to make everyone think I'm crazy. No, he's not. I knelt in front of her, forcing her to look at me. Because we have the truth. And the truth is stronger than his lies. But privately, I worried. Marcus was a lawyer with resources and connections. We were 2 women with a police report and some photos. Was it really going to be enough? The restraining order hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. We spent the weekend preparing with Dr. Kim and a lawyer from the women's shelter, a sharp-eyed woman named Grace Martinez who took our case pro bono. His lawyer is going to try to discredit you, Grace warned Sarah. They'll say you're lying about the abuse. They'll point to the fact that you didn't report it earlier. They'll say the switch with your sister proves you're manipulative. What do we say to that? Sarah asked. The truth. That you were afraid. That coercive control is designed to make victims doubt themselves and fear reporting. That your sister helped you escape a dangerous situation. Grace looked at me. Emma's testimony about the assault is crucial. And the evidence you gathered, the cameras, the tracking, all of it, shows a pattern of controlling behavior. Will it be enough? I asked. I don't know, Grace admitted. But it's a start. Monday morning arrived too quickly. We dressed carefully, Sarah in conservative clothes that looked respectable but not expensive, me in similar attire. We wanted to look credible, honest, and sympathetic. The courthouse was intimidating, all marble and echoing hallways. And there, across the lobby, stood Marcus with his lawyer, a silver-haired man in a suit that probably cost more than my rent. Marcus's eyes locked onto Sarah, and I felt her shrink beside me. But then she straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and stared right back at him. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," she said, quietly enough that only I could hear. And I believed her. The hearing room was smaller than I expected. Just a judge's bench, a few tables, and rows of seats for observers. Judge Patricia Hernandez was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and an expression that gave nothing away. Marcus's lawyer went first, painting a picture of a devoted husband confused by his wife's sudden abandonment. He made Marcus sound like a victim, a man who'd provided everything for his wife, only to have her vanish without explanation. "My client has been frantic with worry," the lawyer said smoothly. "He came home to find his wife gone, no note, no explanation. And then he discovers that her twin sister has been impersonating her, going through his private belongings, violating his trust. This is not the behavior of someone fleeing abuse, Your Honor. This is manipulation." I watched Sarah's hands clench in her lap. Then it was Grace's turn. She presented the evidence methodically. Photos of the cameras throughout the house, screenshots of the tracking apps, testimony from Dr. Kim about coercive control. And then she called me to the stand. I told the judge everything. About finding Sarah with bruises, about the switch, about the rigid rules Marcus enforced. I showed her the marks on my wrist, still faintly visible, and described how Marcus had grabbed me when he discovered the truth. He said Sarah belonged to him. I testified. Those were his exact words. That everything she had was because of him, and I had no right to interfere. Marcus's lawyer objected repeatedly, calling my testimony hearsay, claiming I was biased. But Judge Hernandez let me finish. Finally, Sarah took the stand. She was shaking so badly, I thought she might not be able to speak. But when Grace asked her first question, "Why did you leave your husband?" something changed in Sarah's face. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something stronger. "Because I was disappearing," she said quietly. "Every day with Marcus, I became less myself and more what he wanted me to be. He controlled what I wore, who I saw, what I ate, when I slept. He monitored my phone, tracked my location, watched me through cameras in our home. And when I tried to push back, even a little, he made me feel like I was the problem. Like I was ungrateful or crazy or broken." "Did he ever physically harm you?" Grace asked. "Yes. Not often, but yes. A shove here, a grip that left bruises there. But mostly it was the other things. The constant criticism. The isolation. The way he made me doubt my own reality." Sarah's voice grew stronger as she spoke. "I lived in fear for 3 years. Fear of making him angry, fear of doing something wrong, fear of what would happen if I tried to leave." "And why did you finally leave?" Sarah looked directly at Marcus for the first time. "Because my sister reminded me who I used to be. And I realized that the woman I'd become, quiet, afraid, invisible, that wasn't me. That was what Marcus had made me. And I didn't want to be that person anymore." The room was silent. Even Marcus's lawyer seemed at a loss for words. Judge Hernandez reviewed the evidence for what felt like an eternity. Then she looked up, her gaze moving between Marcus and Sarah. "Mr. Chun," she said, "I've reviewed the evidence presented today, including photographs of surveillance equipment in your home, applications on your wife's phone that tracked her movements, and testimony from multiple witnesses about your controlling behavior. I've also heard testimony about an assault on Mrs. Chen's sister when she confronted you." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. While some of these behaviors may not constitute criminal acts on their own, together they paint a clear picture of coercive control. A pattern of behavior designed to dominate and intimidate. Mrs. Chun has demonstrated reasonable fear for her safety. The judge turned to Sarah. "I'm granting the temporary restraining order. Mr. Chun is prohibited from contacting you directly or indirectly, from coming within 500 feet of you, and from attempting to track or monitor your location. This order will remain in effect pending the divorce proceedings." Sarah's hand found mine under the table and squeezed hard. "Furthermore," Judge Hernandez continued, I'm ordering Mr. Chen to remove all surveillance equipment from the marital home within 72 hours and to cease all monitoring of Mrs. Chen's electronic devices. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest and criminal charges. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. His lawyer put a hand on his arm, but Marcus shook it off. For a moment he just stared at Sarah, and I saw everything in that look: rage, disbelief, and underneath it all, the fear of a man losing control. Then he turned and walked out. 3 months later, Sarah and I sat in my apartment. Her apartment now too, since she'd moved in temporarily, eating takeout and laughing at something stupid on TV. She looked different than she had that day she'd shown up at my door. Her face had filled out, color had returned to her cheeks, and most importantly, the fear had left her eyes. The divorce was proceeding, though Marcus was fighting every step. He'd violated the restraining order twice. Once by showing up at our mother's house looking for Sarah, once by having a friend call her, and both times he'd spent a night in jail. His law firm had quietly asked him to take a leave of absence after the restraining order became public knowledge. Do you think it's really over? Sarah asked me now, setting down her container of pad thai. I thought about it. I think Marcus will always be who he is. But he can't touch you anymore. Not legally. Not physically. And eventually, he'll move on to trying to control something else. Someone else, maybe, though God help them. I hope not, Sarah said quietly. I hope. I don't know. I hope he learns something from this. That he can't treat people like property. That was the difference between me and my sister. Even after everything, she still hoped for his redemption. I just hoped he stayed far away from us. Grace called today, I said, changing the subject. The judge in the divorce case saw the restraining order hearing transcripts. She's recommending an equitable division of assets, not the one-sided arrangement Marcus was pushing for. Sarah's eyes widened. Really? Really? You're going to be okay, Sarah. Financially, legally, all of it. You're going to be okay. She started crying then, but they were good tears. Relief tears. I couldn't have done this without you. When you offered to switch places, I thought you were crazy. But Emma, you saved my life. You saved your own life, I corrected. You made the choice to leave. I just gave you the space to do it. You did more than that. She wiped her eyes. You showed me that I was worth fighting for. That I deserved better. All those years, Marcus convinced me that I was lucky to have him. That no one else would want me. That I was too difficult or demanding or broken. And I believed him. You were never any of those things. I know that now. She smiled, and it was the most genuine smile I'd seen from her in years. I'm starting to know that now. 6 months after that day in the courthouse, Sarah signed the final divorce papers. She got half of everything, including enough money to start over. She found her own apartment, got a job at a nonprofit that helped domestic violence survivors, and started therapy to work through the trauma. I went back to my regular life, freelance design work, takeout dinners, friends who came over without asking permission. But something had changed in me too. I'd seen what coercive control looked like up close, had felt the suffocating weight of being monitored and managed. And I'd learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is help someone escape their cage, even if it means stepping into it yourself for a while. Marcus sent one final message, 6 months to the day after the restraining order was granted. It came to my email, not Sarah's, a clear violation of the order, but impossible to prove since it didn't mention her by name. You think you won, it said. But you didn't. You just got lucky. And luck runs out. I read it once, then forwarded it to Grace and Detective Morrison. Then I blocked his email and deleted the message. Because here's what Marcus never understood. It wasn't about winning or losing. It wasn't about luck. It was about a woman choosing herself over the man who tried to make her small. It was about love between sisters strong enough to risk everything. It was about the simple revolutionary act of saying, no more, and meaning it. Marcus had spent years building a perfect prison for my sister. But prisons only work if the person inside believes they can't leave. And the moment Sarah walked out that door, the moment she chose freedom over fear, she broke the only power he ever really had. The power of her belief that she was trapped. A year later, I got a text from an unknown number. My first instinct was to delete it, but something made me open it instead. Emma, it's Sarah. New phone. Marcus doesn't have this number. I wanted to tell you something. I met someone. His name is David and he's kind. He makes me laugh. He asks what I want for dinner instead of telling me. And when I told him about Marcus, about everything, he listened and said that must have been so hard, instead of trying to fix it or tell me what I should have done differently. I'm not rushing into anything. I'm taking it slow. But Emma, I'm happy. Really truly happy. And I wanted you to know. Thank you for giving me my life back. I love you. S. I read it 3 times, my vision blurring with tears. Then I typed back. You gave yourself your life back. I just held the door open. I'm so proud of you. Love you too. And that was the truth. Sarah had done the hardest part. She'd chosen to leave, to fight, to rebuild. I'd just been there to remind her that she could. Sometimes I think about that day when she showed up at my door with bruises and fear and a desperate request. I think about how easily I could have said no. Could have told her to go to the police instead. Could have stayed safe in my own uncomplicated life. But I didn't. And because I didn't, my sister got her freedom. Got her life back. Got the chance to discover who she really was beneath all the layers of control and fear Marcus had wrapped around her. That's the thing about love, real love, sister love, the kind that shares DNA and childhood memories and a bond that goes deeper than words. It asks you to be brave when someone you love can't be brave for themselves. It asks you to step into the darkness so they can find the light. And I would do it again. In a heartbeat. Without hesitation. Because some cages can only be opened from the outside. And sometimes, making someone's life hell is the most loving thing you can do. Looking back now, I understand that what happened between Marcus and Sarah wasn't really about him at all. It was about a woman who'd forgotten she had the right to take up space in the world. To have opinions. To make choices. To be imperfect and still worthy of love. And maybe that's the lesson I want you to hear, if you're listening to this story. If you're in a relationship where you have to make yourself smaller to fit, where you're walking on eggshells, where love feels like surveillance, that's not love. That's control. And you deserve so much more. You deserve to laugh without permission. To see your family without justification. To make mistakes without punishment. To be fully, messily, beautifully yourself. And if you can't do it alone, find someone who loves you enough to help. A sister, a friend, a stranger who understands. Because no one should have to live in a cage, no matter how beautiful it looks from the outside. So I'll ask you this. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping yourself? And if you did, which one did you choose? Tell me in the comments. Share your story. Because every voice that speaks up makes it easier for the next person to find their courage. And remember, you are not alone. You never were.